Hi everyone. It's great to see you again. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Today, we have a brand new story to share with you. So, let's get started. I should have known it was going to happen. We had been married for 8 years and the sly jabs were something we always did. There was a line I couldn't cross at my in-laws' 38th anniversary party that night. The evening began like any other family get-together, forced smiles, awkward small talk, and my wife slowly pulling away from me as soon as we got there. Her parents had always looked down on me with a thin veneer of respect. They were never good enough for their precious daughter, even though they worked 60 hours a week to give her the life she wanted. When I got to the beautifully decorated hall, my mother-in-law gave each person a name tag. It didn't bother me until I looked down at mine. It was written in big black letters, "Worthless husband." It wasn't my name or son-in-law, it was just "Worthless husband." I stood there frozen, thinking it had to be a mistake. Then I saw my wife grin as she saw how I was reacting. The other guests were already talking to each other. Some looked at my name tag with strange looks on their faces, while others laughed behind their champagne drinks. "Is this what you call a joke?" I told my wife in a whisper as I pulled her aside. She laughed as she looked at me with those cold eyes I was used to. "Well, that's true, right?" What she said hit me like a punch. 10 years of giving up things, making concessions, and trying to make her happy were all thrown out in an instant of meanness. That's when I finally broke down. I'd been carrying proof of her deception in my wallet for months. Text messages, hotel bills, and photos from the private investigator all proved what I had thought for more than a year. I had been planning a proper escape while waiting for the right time. But it was clear that honor wasn't on the table tonight. It was quiet as I walked to the bar, ordered a whiskey, and drank it all at once. I had the courage I needed because of the warmth in my chest. I took a spoon and clinked it against my glass. The sound was loud enough to drown out the other people talking until the room was quiet. Anyone who saw me stood tall and saw the tag still on my chest turned their attention to me. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, my voice more steady than I felt. "Achieving 40 years of marriage is a big deal." I pointed my glass at my in-laws. "And to the last time you'll see me." There was no sound in the room at all. My husband's dad choked on his drink. My wife's smile broke, and she looked confused instead of proud. I went on, "I've spent 10 years trying to be good enough for this family. Tonight, though, made it very clear that would never happen." I took out an envelope from the pocket of my jacket. I thought I'd add something since we're celebrating honesty tonight. It's now on the table next to me. She has filed for divorce and shown proof of her romance for the past 3 years. My wife's face lost all of its color. "What are you talking about this time?" She stuttered, but the fear in her eyes showed what she really meant. "Western Lakes Hotel Room 412. For 8 months now, every Thursday afternoon. It used to be called the Harborview Inn. Should I keep going?" Her angry dad stood up, and his face turned all the way around. "That's enough." I said, "Yes." That was enough for me. I took off the name tag, threw it into my empty drink, and left the room. As my wife ran for the package behind me, chaos broke out. But it was caught by her cousin, who had warned me secretly months before. I heard my wife's first sob as I opened the door. Even though the sound should have made me feel good, all I felt as I walked out into the cool night air was complete freedom. It was strange to drive home from the anniversary party. I thought the air at night was cleaner and fresher than during the day. For the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling like suspicion was going to crush my chest. This wasn't always the case. The first few years we spent together were good, not perfect, but real. We cooked breakfast together every Sunday, went to the beach on the weekends, and whispered our plans for the future. Things did change though at some point. Because she was doing well at work, she had to work longer hours, and her rising dissatisfaction became clear in our home. 3 years ago, the first sign showed up. Her phone flashed with a text message alert while she was in the shower. A name I didn't know and words that wouldn't come from a coworker. At that time, I brushed it off, hiding my suspicions under layers of denial. We had history. Promise. That had to mean something, right? But the signs got bigger. Work events that went on late at night and didn't leave a digital trail. She bought new clothes that she never wore around me. The rising emotional distance and the criticism that hurt my sense of self-worth over time. The way she jerked back when I touched her without meaning to. The smell of a strange cologne that wasn't quite gone. I talked to her about it once, about 8 months ago. She laughed it off and told me I was crazy and scared. Changed it so that I was telling her I was sorry. It was classic gaslighting, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I stayed awake that night next to her and stared at the ceiling, not sure if I was going crazy. I called a private detective the next day. It wasn't out of anger, it was a need to know the truth. Any truth would put an end to the frustrating doubt. After 2 weeks, he brought a manila package to my office. Before I opened it, I waited until everyone had left for the day. The pictures were clear. The same person. Not the same places. Her yoga class was supposed to be on Thursday afternoons. In one picture, they were laughing together in a diner, and she had her hand close to his. It had been years since I had seen her so happy. I should have talked to her then. Instead, I kept gathering proof, making financial records, protecting my assets, and talking to a divorce lawyer. When I think about it now, I think I was looking for something that would explain the violation or show that what we had built together had been important to her. I became a ghost in my own life during those months of quiet preparation. I did the things I needed to do, but mentally I was pulling away. At every dinner with her parents, they made fun of me in a subtle way, and at every social event, she spoke badly about me loud enough for everyone to hear. I dealt with it all with a new sense of distance because I knew it was only temporary. It wasn't the affair itself that drove me crazy. It was understanding that the jokes about me, the criticism, and the name tag weren't just mean jokes. They were a planned attempt to make me look like the problem, making up a story that would explain why she lied to herself and others when the truth came out. I finished up with my lawyer the night before the anniversary party. We were going to wait another week and take care of everything on our own. But after seeing the name tag and hearing her, it's true. Something broke. At that moment, years of planned rudeness became clear, and I knew I couldn't lie for another night. As I pulled into a hotel parking lot, which wasn't one of her usual spots on Thursday afternoons, my phone blew up with texts from her parents, and even her cheating partner, who got my number somehow. I turned it off without reading any of them. I sat on the edge of the bed and put the room key on the desk in my hotel room. I didn't worry about what would happen tomorrow for the first time in years. Don't worry about not being good enough. There was only a strange, empty clarity in the strange feeling of putting myself first. It would be messy to get a divorce. Her family had wealth and connections. But I had the truth on my side, carefully written down. Surprisingly, that was enough for me as I lay down in that empty hotel room. When I woke up, I had 37 missed calls and 52 text messages. Most of them came from her, some from her parents, and a few from people they both have who are already taking sides without knowing the whole story. I didn't pay attention to any of them and instead called my lawyer. "You couldn't wait another week?" "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice loud and angry. The last straw was the name tag. I gave a short answer. He sighed. Well, the element of surprise worked in our favor for sure. Her lawyer called me at midnight, almost pleading for a meeting. And they were in damage control mode. After the anniversary party, I found out, it was exactly the kind of chaos you'd expect. After I left, her cousin gave the letter to her father instead of her, even though she had known for months that she was having an affair. A little act of defiance against the star child of the family. The calm man that her father always was opened it right there at the table. As he looked through hotel receipts, screenshots of text messages, and pictures of his daughter wrapped around another guy, the color left his face. "Is this true?" he had asked, his voice cutting through her tears. She was too scared to look him in the eye. Next, her mother grabbed the papers and gasped when she saw the man in the pictures. He was the husband of one of her friends. The story would hit their group of friends like a tsunami. When I left the hotel, word had already spread. In the midst of all the messages on my phone, one from her father asking to meet secretly stood out. I agreed to meet for coffee at a quiet downtown spot because I was interested. He looked older than the night before because his shoulders were hunched under his pricey jacket. "I owe you an apology," he said right away after the waitress brought us our drinks. That's all I said while waiting. "We've been unfair to you," they said, believing her story without question. He looked at his coffee. It wasn't just her idea to make that name tag. It made us all laugh. "Now?" I asked. "I'm now interested in what kind of people we've turned into." He took an envelope out of his jacket. "These are copies of your proof," her cousin told her. She tried to throw away the originals, but they were already copied. It was moved across the table by him. "You should also know this. I shouldn't have been shocked by what I learned, but I was. The mate wasn't the first one to have an affair. There had been others, going back almost to the start of our marriage. They knew she was cheating but didn't tell anyone, so they made me the bad guy in their story instead of facing their daughter's betrayal." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because you were always honest, no matter what. We should have given you more than what we did." He looked right into my eyes for the first time. "Also, because she says you made up everything. She's making up a story about mental abuse and saying, you changed those photos." I laughed without meaning to. "Of course she is. We won't believe what she says," he said firmly. "Not this time," she said. Later that day, she found me and came to my hotel. Later, the hotel's security video was used in the divorce proceedings. It showed her yelling in the lobby and demanding my room number, with mascara running down her face. When they said no, she tried something else. When I called my phone from the hallway, my voice became soft and pleading. "Just talk to me," I asked. "Something went wrong with him, but we can fix it." It didn't mean anything. I could hear the lobby water in the background of the call, letting me know she was there performing for everyone to see. My calm answer was, 3 years wasn't a mistake. There was a choice. The one you made every Thursday afternoon. "Please do anything," she begged. "It could be therapy, counseling, or something else. 10 years is too long to waste on one mistake. 3 years. I changed that to multiple men. When she said, "Your father told me everything," there was dead quiet. She finally whispered, "He's lying." Her fear was clear. I told them goodbye and hung up. Soon after, I watched her leave the building through the window of my hotel room, her phone still pressed to her ear. She was probably already planning the next part of her story. But I wouldn't have to worry about it for the first time in years. The weight of always watching what I say, walking on eggshells, and questioning what I think was gone. It wasn't happiness or even anger that came in its place, it was a quiet, growing sense of possibility. Following my sudden departure, the weeks were a strange flip of everything I had known. People who used to smile nicely and ignore her subtle insults now told her they were there for her. Friends I hadn't talked to in a while came back into my life and offered me beds to sleep on and shoulders to lean on. The change in how her family worked together surprised her the most. I got a call from her younger sister 3 days after the party. "I want you to know that I never thought you were worthless," she said right away when I answered. "I should have said something every time she put you down. I'm sorry. Why didn't you do it?" I asked, genuinely interested. Family politics, was her simple answer. But I'm done with that now, said more than one person. Friends of ours started telling each other stories about how they had seen my wife leaving parties early with weak reasons and making mean comments about me when I wasn't there. One friend told the investigator that they had seen her with another guy months before I hired them, but they didn't know how to tell me. He told her over beers one night. I told myself it wasn't my business. I'm sorry, but that was weak. Almost every day, my lawyer called to give me information. When she had to deal with witness statements and proof, her first plan to make me look like I was controlling and abusive fell apart. As a last resort, she turned to money and demanded the house, alimony, and half of my income. These are all common ways to negotiate. We have leverage, my lawyer told me. Be smart with it. The big surprise came during our first mediation meeting. When I got there early, ready to fight, her dad was already there, waiting in the parking lot. His hand went to the building and he said, "I'm here as a witness." "If you'll have me," she said. The look on her face when she saw her dad sitting on my side of the table was worth all the money she had to pay for the lawyers. His quietly told of years of seeing her manipulate situations, twist facts, and gaslight me into thinking I was the problem, and her carefully put-together story fell apart in real time. That was enough, her lawyer finally said. We need to talk in private. When they got back, her requests were very different from before. There will be no more claims on the house or large amounts of alimony. There will be a clean break in the split of assets accumulated during the marriage. That evening, I started taking back places I had left empty while we were dating. I went back to my old boxing gym, called my college friend who had moved abroad years ago and we talked like it hadn't been that long, and signed up for a cooking class I'd always been interested in but had been told not to take. When I helped my friend move a couch the next weekend, he said, "You're different. More present in some way." It hit me how much of myself I had pushed down to be what she wanted. How much energy I'd spent keeping an eye on her moods, waiting for her to criticize me, and questioning how I saw things. Being free from that constant watchfulness was like coming up from the water. Sounds were clearer, colors were brighter, and breathing was easy. Not that it was all moving forward. At 3 a.m. some nights, my heart would race as I relived parts of our marriage through this new view of awareness. When there were warning signs, I didn't pay attention to them. I let manipulation happen, and my sense of self-worth slowly fell until I was left with doubt and regret. It was what my doctor called trauma bonding. During one lesson, she talked about how the relationship turned into a cycle of punishment and reward. It's kind of like how gambling obsession works. The unknown keeps you hooked, and you're always hoping for acceptance, which comes just often enough to keep the cycle going. She was right. I had been betting with my self-worth for years that if I just worked harder, did better, and made more, people would finally accept me. 10 years of my life had been spent on the unfair game. I got a text message from an unknown number 6 weeks after the anniversary party. "On Thursday, buddy. Let's talk." I almost pressed the delete button, but I was too interested to stop. We got together at a coffee shop across town. He said right away, "She told me you were split up, said you hurt them personally and that you agreed to see other people. You thought that for 3 years?" I asked. He turned away. It made me want to believe it. "When I learned that you two were still living together and going on trips." I spoke to her. "She said you were on the same page." "There was, in fact, agreement." I answered. I knew we were going to do it. She knew she was not telling the truth. An envelope was moved across the table by him. She told other people that I changed those hotel pictures and that nothing happened between us. These show that's not true. If you need to, use them. I didn't touch the folder between us. Why do you need to help me now? He looked me in the eyes and said, "Because I finally realized, if she could lie so easily about you. It's likely she lied about everything else too." I said, "Yes," and stood up to leave. The folder stayed put on the table. Do you not want this? He asked for me. I quickly turned around. I'm done with it now. As I walked away, I saw that it was true. What we know. The lie. What she thinks of me. It didn't matter anymore. Finally, I didn't have to prove anything to anyone, not even myself. It had been 3 months since the anniversary party. I was sitting next to my lawyer as he tossed papers across his desk. It didn't work out in negotiations. She changed her mind again and now wanted half of everything, even the business I started before we met. He told her that she's looking for a deal. Even though her case is weak, she is counting on your desire to avoid a hearing. He was right. A part of me wanted to give up and pay whatever it took to get this chapter over with as soon as possible. Still, there was another part that wouldn't be silenced. It was the part that finally spoke up at the anniversary party. I decided that we should go to court. During the discovery part, I found financial lies I hadn't expected. Joint accounts were empty for months before the fight. I had never seen credit cards with my name on them. A secret account from which she had been taking money from the family for years. My forensic accountant told me to look at these deals. Since 3 years ago, regular payments have been made to this account in another country. The exact time when the affair began. The time wasn't a mistake. She had been planning her exit strategy and saving money for a time when she wouldn't need me. The treachery was planned, methodical, and not just an emotional act of greed. Then there were more discoveries. When the girl went to Miami and Las Vegas, she met up with different guys. I thought I lost some gold, but it was sold. Even her wedding ring, which was a gift from my grandma, was gone, probably turned into cash for her secret fund. One night, her dad called, and his voice was rough. You should know something else. He said that they had found evidence that she had been stealing her mother's jewelry for years, changing expensive pieces with more expensive fakes. Things that were valuable both financially and emotionally were quietly going missing and helping her pay for her double life. We called the police, he said, and it was clear that the words hurt. I had no idea. His speech stopped. I didn't either. I answered. At the preliminary meeting, her lawyer made a settlement offer that was much lower than what she had asked for at the start. With raised eyebrows, my lawyer gave me the paper. He whispered, she's giving up. She is worried that the police are looking into who stole the gold. I quickly read the terms. Fair sharing of our real shared riches. No claim on my business before we got married. Alimony that is fair for 1 year. Something broke off. What's the catch? I asked. After reading it again, he pointed to a phrase that was hard to find in all the legalese. I wouldn't be able to talk to anyone about the details of our breakup. A broad confidentiality clause that would stop me from telling other people about her habits or defending myself against the stories she tells. No deal. I said right away. I'm not going to be quiet. I saw her mother outside the building. It was the first time we'd seen each other since the anniversary. In some way, she looked smaller. The bossy woman who gave me that embarrassing name tag was now less powerful because her daughter had lied to her. She said in a soft voice, I should have seen who she really was. I helped her hurt you instead. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound like empty clichés. There was a weird hush until she spoke again. We've made her whole life possible. Made up reasons. Took care of her. That led to this. She gave me a straight look. I'm sorry for what I did. That night, a courier brought a package to my room that needed to be signed for. My grandmother's wedding ring was fixed up and shined inside. The note was very simple. Taken back from a Baltimore pawn shop. It should be with you. Her dad. It is in my safe next to the divorce papers and proof files. Physical signs of the end of a chapter. In the following week, something else unexpected happened. There was a woman who called my lawyer and said she had been seeing my wife's affair partner at the same time they were dating. My lawyer told her as he sent her signed statement, she needs to know she wasn't the only one being lied to. With each new discovery, the web of betrayal grew. She had done the same thing with the man she left our marriage for. Making up the same complicated lies. Most likely making her the same empty promises she had believed so eagerly. These findings didn't make me feel good. Only a better understanding of how deeply I was involved in many layers of lies. With each new information, it became clearer that the only sensible thing to do was to leave. I worked through the questions that kept coming up in treatment. Not the reason she lied. That was about her, not how good I was. But why did I put up with the rudeness for so long? How I had slowly come to accept a less than perfect version of myself as normal. My doctor told me that you were making the sunk cost mistake. It got harder to walk away the more you put into trying to make it work. Even as more proof showed that you should. She was right. I thought endurance meant loyalty. Having to suffer for loyalty. The name tag at the anniversary party hadn't made me lose it. It only made what was broken stand out more. I found out that she had accepted our counteroffer 6 months after that terrible night. There is no secrecy clause. Don't try to take my business. A clean break with no financial ties that still need to be fixed. I stood on my porch that night and watched the sun go down. Finally starting to feel lighter after 10 years. Forms and signatures would be brought tomorrow. The legal end of a part of my story that I used to think would be the last one. But tonight. Tonight was a night to remember how far I'd come from the time when I looked at that useless husband tag and, for a terrible moment, thought it might be true. Every day for a year after what happened at the anniversary party, I stood in front of the mirror and fixed my tie. The person whose image I saw was someone I was still getting to know. A man with shoulders that are straight and eyes that are clear. He is no longer ready for criticism or basing his worth on what other people think. They were no longer married after 7 months of divorce. The events were not as heated as they could have been. The testimony of her father and the growing body of proof had taken away her power. She signed the papers without looking at me at the end. The last time she performed Wounded Innocence, the theater was empty. After the scandal that affected their friends and family, her parents sold their house and moved across the country. It was a fresh start. We still sent each other texts every once in a while. A few changes. Not anything deep. This strange bond grew out of a shared sense of hopelessness. After that, my business did really well. Without the steady drain of a bad relationship, I had more energy and ideas. The team saw the change right away. During a strategy meeting, my operations boss said, "It's like working with a different person. You're more present and sure of yourself." She was right. For years, I'd second-guessed every business choice I made because I could hear my wife's words in my head, questioning my judgment and saying I would fail. That voice was no longer heard. The effects on society were not all good. Some of their friends had taken sides and believed her story even though there was proof to the contrary. Others had quietly pulled away from both of us because they didn't like how messy real life was getting into their carefully chosen social groups. It turned out that I didn't miss them. Instead, new links had been made, real ones based on mutual respect rather than social duty. I got back in touch with old friends who had stopped talking to me while I was married. Many of them said it had been hard to see how slowly I fell apart because of her. My college friend told me about that relationship when we got together over the weekend. It felt like someone was slowly being erased. On her end, there had been tries to make things right. Calls that make you cry at midnight. A letter written by hand saying that the writer has changed and feels bad about what they did. A chance meeting that was staged to look like it happened by accident, where she showed up with a well-rehearsed speech about growth and second chances. Each time, the desire to get involved had grown weaker. This wasn't because I was angry or resentful, but because I knew that getting involved again would be a violation of myself that I could not do. One last, surprising turn had been revealed in the court case. As we thought, the money she was taking out wasn't for an escape fund after the split. The animal had been visiting a hospital in Switzerland. She was getting expensive care for an illness she had kept from everyone, even her lover. That finding temporarily made the wound worse. Because of her diagnosis, had she started having affairs and lying about money? Was there a story where she turned out to be the likable character? My doctor helped me find my way through that moral maze. She told me that illness can explain behavior but doesn't give people the right to be cruel. A lot of people go through health problems without betraying the people they love. She was right. The analysis gave us information, but it did not forgive us. The constant shame, gaslighting, and theft of money were choices, not symptoms. I looked at my watch. It's almost time. The launch party for our company's growth was tonight. This was a big moment that I had been working toward for years. The people on my team insisted on having a real party, so we rented a rooftop space with a view of the city. I thought about my trip over the past year as I drove there. The name tag episode, which seemed like a disaster, turned out to be a way to get away. Being shamed in public had set something off inside me. Not my honor, as she had meant, but the bonds of a false story I had believed for too long. When I got there, the place was already very busy. People from work, clients, and investors all came together to celebrate what we'd accomplished together. A familiar face caught my eye near the bar as I made my way through the crowd of people who were happy for me. Her cousin was talking to my marketing director. That night, her cousin had taken the envelope and made copies of the proof. She saw me, said she was sorry, and walked over. "I hope it's okay that I crash," she said with a smile. "Your helper told you it was fine." "Of course." I responded that I was glad to see her. "How are you?" She said in her usual frank way, "Better than some of the family. By the way, she's back with her parents. The medicines didn't help." I just nodded because I wasn't sure what to say. She added, "Don't worry," reading my face. "I didn't come to bring up family problems. What made me come is seeing what you've built." Her hand moved around the room. "It looks great." I spent the late evening on the rooftop deck, where I could be alone and enjoy the stars. From afar, I could see the hotel where the party for the anniversary had been held a year before. From this point of view, it looked small and unimportant. There was a text message on my phone. Number not known. But I knew right away what it was about. Another request from my ex-wife. Yet another attempt to change the past. I removed it before reading past the first line, and then I blocked the number. Some stories don't need to end. There are people who don't deserve second chances. Some betrayals can't be fixed by saying sorry or giving a reason. When I got back to the party and was surrounded by people who appreciated what I brought to the table and respected my boundaries, I realized the most important thing I had learned all year. Leaving doesn't always mean the end. It's sometimes the start you've been waiting for. That name tag that said, "Worthless Husband," was meant to make me feel less important, but it turned out to help me find my worth again. Not by getting even or getting revenge, but by doing the easy but powerful thing of not taking part in my own destruction any longer. And that might have been the biggest win of all.